She wondered, how far would someone go to save a loved one? On a cold Christmas morning in New York, millionaire Lucas, surrounded by luxury and superficiality, crossed paths with Clara, a beggar who was hiding under a torn blanket. He didn't expect that this encounter would change his life forever. When he saw her tired, pain-filled eyes, something inside him woke up. Lucas decided to help her, but in doing so, he would discover a sacrifice Clara had made for her mother, revealing a story of love and resilience that would challenge everything he believed about wealth and happiness. It was Christmas, and the streets of New York were adorned with twinkling lights, and the sweet smell of cinnamon wafted through the air. But behind the city's beauty, there was a harsh and unforgiving reality. Clara, wrapped in a worn blanket, watched the passers-by with a distant gaze. Every face that passed represented a dream she could no longer achieve. She had left behind a comfortable life to care for her sick mother, and the loneliness slowly consumed her. Meanwhile, Lucas, a successful businessman, felt that life had lost its luster. He was surrounded by parties and laughter, but within him there was an emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. Clara's dream had always been to be an artist. Since she was a child, she has drawn and painted, creating vibrant worlds in her mind. But reality forced her to give up her aspirations, and now she found herself wandering the streets without hope. Lucas, on the other hand, dreamed of building a legacy, but felt that each achievement was becoming a burden. He often wondered if money really brought happiness. Their meeting was not mere chance. When Lucas saw Clara, something in his heart stirred. He approached, offering a hot coffee and some banknotes. The gratitude in her eyes made him realize that it wasn't just coins he was giving, but a chance for Clara to regain some dignity. Talking, they exchanged stories and dreams. Clara, although marked by life, still retained a glimmer of hope. Every word she said showed the strength of a spirit that refused to be broken. As Lucas listened to Clara, he was faced with the fragility of his own existence. He realized that he had surrounded himself with people who valued him for his wealth rather than who he really was. That woman, with her story of sacrifice, made Lucas question his own choices. What really mattered? He began to wonder if it was possible to find a new purpose in his life. As the day progressed, Lucas made a choice. Not only did he decide to help Clara, but he also committed to understanding her story better. He offered to help her find shelter and, more importantly, resources so she could start painting again. As he delved deeper into her life, Lucas discovered the sacrifice Clara had made for her mother. She had given up her career and dreams to care for the only person she had left, and it touched him deeply. The connection between them became undeniable. Lucas saw in Clara not just a beggar, but a strong woman who faced unimaginable challenges. He began to become more involved in her life, and together, they shared moments of joy and pain. Each conversation revealed more layers of their personalities. Clara, with her humor and wisdom, challenged Lucas to see the world in a different way, while he, with his support, offered her a glimmer of hope. As the city lit up for Christmas Eve, Lucas and Clara found new meaning in their lives. He realized that true value was in human connections, not material possessions. And Clara, with a heart full of gratitude, began to believe that she could still fight for her dreams, even if life had taken her on a different path. Together, they discovered that even in the most challenging situations, friendship and love can flourish, bringing light and meaning to life. Lucas watched Clara as she told her stories, and something inside him stirred. He remembered his own battles, the nights he couldn't sleep because of the pressure of work, the endless meetings, and the expectations that never seemed to be fulfilled. The life he led was full of deadlines and commitments, but now, with Clara, everything seemed different. He felt a weight in his heart, as if her every word was freeing him from an invisible burden he had carried for years. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice," Clara said, looking at the ground, as if the answers were there, hidden among the paving stones. "I left my dreams to take care of my mother. But what if I had moved on? What if I had tried to be an artist? Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He didn't have the answers to her questions, but he understood the pain of doubt. He had asked himself this question many times. Was he a successful businessman or just a prisoner of his own ambition? Clara, with her simple and sincere way of seeing the world, made him question not only his choices, but the essence of what he considered success. "Sometimes I feel like we're trapped in our own lives," Lucas replied, his voice shaking. "We forget to live and end up just existing. I have everything I ever wanted, but I still feel empty." Clara looked up, and Lucas saw a spark of understanding. "You have the courage to look inside yourself, Lucas. This is rare. Many people prefer to live under the illusion that everything is fine. Are you willing to relocate?" Her words resonated in his mind. What did it really mean to change? Lucas looked around, at the flashing lights and people rushing by, without noticing the depth of that conversation. He was at a turning point, and Clara's willpower inspired him to face his own truth. However, this new relationship was not without challenges. When Lucas decided to help Clara, he had to face reactions from his friends and business colleagues. One of them, Ricardo, a longtime friend and partner in the company, did not hesitate to express his concern. "Lucas, what are you doing? Help a beggar? This is nothing but a waste of time. You're risking your reputation for someone you barely know," Ricardo shouted in a meeting, his voice full of contempt. Lucas felt heat rise to his face. He remembered Clara, how her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams. "She's not just a beggar, Ricardo. She is an artist. And if I can help you get back to creating, maybe that will mean something bigger than any deal we can do," he replied, trying to contain his frustration. "You are letting yourself be carried away by a fleeting emotion. What if all this is in vain? What if you end up getting burned in this story?" Ricardo insisted, challenging him to reconsider his actions. Those words cut like knives. Lucas felt the pressure of the world around him, the expectations of everyone around him. He began to doubt his decision, to question whether he really had what it took to make a difference. What if Clara wasn't able to resume her dream? What if he was just deluding himself? But at the same time, there was a new flame inside him, fueled by the connection he had created with Clara. He couldn't go back. Her look, full of hope and gratitude, prevented him from giving up. Lucas realized that it wasn't just Clara who needed help. He was also discovering himself and seeking a new purpose. And this search was becoming increasingly difficult. In a moment of weakness, he decided to visit Clara again, not just as a friend, but as someone who was beginning to see life in a different way. Upon arriving at the shelter where she was staying, Lucas found Clara sitting at a table, surrounded by paints and brushes, trying to resume the art she had abandoned. "Hi, Lucas. Did you come to see me?" Clara smiled, but Lucas could notice the shadow of insecurity in her eyes. "I'm here to help you," he said, sitting down next to you. "But I'm feeling confused. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing." She looked at him, eyes full of understanding. "It's normal to have doubts, Lucas. Life is full of uncertainties, but you're trying, and that's what matters. I just want you to know that your help means a lot to me. You make me believe that I can still fight for my dreams." Her words touched Lucas in a profound way. He wanted to be the anchor that supported Clara on her journey, but now he also needed support to navigate his own internal storms. They were on a boat together, facing rough seas, and Lucas realized that their friendship was a lighthouse in the darkness. As Clara began to paint, Lucas watched her, feeling a growing pride in her. Each brushstroke was like a declaration of freedom, an affirmation that she still had dreams. But as time passed, he couldn't help but notice the fragility of his situation. Clara's struggle to get back on her feet reflected her own internal battles. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. They would have to face not only external challenges, but also the fears and insecurities that haunted them. And as their friendship grew, Lucas realized it was also time to face the ghosts of his past and the expectations that surrounded him. And so, amidst doubts and challenges, Lucas and Clara began to follow a path of mutual discovery. They were about to learn that even in the most complicated situations, love and friendship could brighten the darkest days and bring new meaning to life. Lucas watched Clara, his heart heavy with the uncertainties that were emerging. Every brushstroke she made on the canvas was a reminder of the fragility of dreams and the battles they both faced. The confidence he had felt when deciding to help her began to dissipate, suffocated by the weight of expectations and the critical voices that echoed in his mind. He wondered if he was truly prepared for this journey, not just for Clara, but for himself. One night, while recovering from his exhausting work routine, Lucas received a message from Clara. "I don't know if I can continue. I'm stuck here." Her words were like a punch to the gut. He quickly remembered the difficulties that surrounded her, her constant internal struggles to get back on her feet. That message awakened a deep fear within him. What if she gave up? What if he couldn't make a difference either? Determined to act, Lucas went to the shelter. When he arrived, he found Clara sitting silently, the screen blank in front of her. The shine that once illuminated his eyes was absent. "Clara, what happened?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I am unable. With each passing day, it seems like I'm further away from the artist I wanted to be," she replied, her voice breaking. Lucas felt a stab of pain in his chest. It was as if Clara was reflecting his own insecurities back to him. He also felt lost, as if he was sinking under the pressure of his professional life. "You can't give up now. You are so close to discovering the beauty that still exists within you." Lucas tried to encourage her, but his words sounded empty, echoing in an abyss of doubt. Clara looked at him, and Lucas noticed that the hope in her eyes was fading. He knew he needed to find a way to rekindle that flame, but how? In the days that followed, the weight of responsibility began to affect Lucas deeply. He felt increasingly torn between his work obligations and his desire to support Clara. The meetings became more tense, and Ricardo didn't miss the opportunity to criticize his choices. "You're risking losing everything because of a lost cause. What will you do when there is no more Clara?" Ricardo questioned in a sarcastic tone, and his words resonated in Lucas' mind. The pressure was intensifying. Lucas began missing important commitments, putting his position in the company at risk. He found himself thinking about Clara every moment, how she struggled to find her way. But as he dedicated himself more to this friendship, he felt that he was moving away from his own goals. He didn't just want to be a successful businessman on the outside, he wanted his life to have meaning. One afternoon, while they were talking, Clara asked a question that shook him. "Lucas, have you ever asked yourself why you are really here? Why did you decide to help me?" He hesitated. It was a question he hadn't yet allowed himself to ask. "I don't know. I just thought you needed me," he replied, his voice shaking. "We need each other, don't we? But this can't just be about my struggle. What if you were also getting lost in this story?" Clara said, and Lucas was silent. He realized that in trying to save Clara, he had forgotten to take care of himself. Their friendship, although strong, was starting to become a burden, a responsibility that made him more anxious. The situation got worse when, after weeks of attempts and failures, Clara became discouraged. "I think I'm going to give up everything, Lucas. I'm not an artist. I'm just a woman who left her dreams behind," she said, tears streaming down her face. Lucas felt a wave of despair. He wanted to scream, wanted her to see the talent he had, but he himself was struggling to believe it. At that moment, he realized that he could not carry this load alone. Lucas decided he needed help. He sought out a therapist, someone who could guide him through his insecurities and doubts. The sessions were challenging but necessary. He began to understand that the need to succeed and the pressure to be perfect were becoming a vicious cycle that consumed him. While Lucas delved deeper into his own issues, Clara also began looking for ways to find herself again. She decided to enroll in an art course, facing her fears and insecurities. When Lucas found out, he felt a mixture of pride and guilt. On the one hand, he was happy that she had taken this step, but on the other, he was afraid that it would mean that he was no longer needed in her life. Their friendship went through an intense test. Lucas and Clara were on parallel paths, both fighting their internal battles, but now more aware of what they needed from each other. On a cold autumn day, Clara appeared at the shelter, more radiant than ever. "Lucas, I want to do an exhibition. I believe it's time to show my work," she said, full of determination. Lucas smiled, but insecurity still consumed him. "That's incredible, Clara. But what if it doesn't work? What if no one cares?" He didn't want to be the reason for her pessimism. Clara gave him a firm look. "What if it works? What if people identify with my story? The important thing is to try, right?" Clara's determination was a powerful reminder to Lucas. He knew he could not continue to live in fear of failure. They were at a turning point where each needed to encourage the other to move forward despite the uncertainties. Lucas decided that no matter what happened, he would be there for her, not only as a friend, but as someone who was also struggling to find herself. As they prepared for the exhibition, Lucas realized that true friendship is built not only in times of joy, but also in struggles and failures. He was learning that the value was not just in the achievements, but in the journey that took them there. And so, together, they prepared to face whatever came, knowing that their strength lay in unity, friendship, and the courage to start over. Lucas and Clara were at a decisive moment where their lives intertwined in an intense and challenging way. The day of the exhibition was approaching, and anxiety hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Clara had dedicated herself tirelessly to creating her works, but Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that everything could fall apart at any moment. He found himself filled with doubts, questioning whether he would be able to support Clara in the way she needed. Ricardo's critical voices still echoed in his mind, mixing with his own insecurity. On the eve of the exhibition, Clara was one step away from achieving a dream that seemed so far away. She had worked hard, but when Lucas saw her, the tension on her face made him feel butterflies in his stomach. "Are you ready, Clara?" he asked in a tone that tried to be encouraging but betrayed his own uncertainty. Clara took a deep breath, but didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at the works on display and, for a moment, her insecurity manifested itself in a profound silence. It was as if the paintings, which had once been his refuge, now reflected an abyss of fear. "What if nobody likes it? What if I fail?" she finally murmured, her voice full of anguish. Those words cut Lucas like a blade. He felt the pressure was piling up on both of them, and the thought of seeing Clara give up again terrified him. He remembered all the times she had hesitated, and her every failure seemed to resonate with his own insecurities. How could he encourage her when he himself felt on the verge of collapse? "Clara, listen. You are not alone in this. It's not just about being accepted or not. What matters is that you have the courage to show who you really are," Lucas said, trying to convey strength, but his voice was shaking. He saw her expression change, an internal struggle taking effect in her hesitant gaze. Clara's struggle was a reflection of her own. They were both trying to find themselves between expectations and fears. On the night of the exhibition, the shelter was full of people, but Lucas was unable to appreciate the festive atmosphere. He watched Clara move among the guests, trying to smile and appear confident, but he noticed the anxiety pulsing in her hands. He wondered if she was truly ready for this moment, and his worry intensified as time passed. When the time to present the works arrived, Clara positioned herself at the front of the crowd. Lucas felt his heart accelerate. He knew she expected him to be by her side, but he was also caught up in his own emotional storm. Clara started to speak, but her voice was shaking. "This exhibition is more than just art to me. It's about finding the courage to be who I am," she said, and Lucas saw tears pool in her eyes. The sincerity of those words touched everyone present, and he felt swept away by its strength. But at the same time, a shadow of doubt crossed his heart. What if that courage wasn't enough? What if Clara's past became an unbearable weight? When the speech ended, the audience applauded, but Lucas was paralyzed, fighting the wave of emotions that invaded him. What seemed like a moment of triumph for Clara had become a mirror of her own despair. He felt unable to deal with his own failures, with the pressure of being someone who could help. What was supposed to be a moment of celebration turned into a silent struggle, where he confronted his past mistakes and the way he had lost himself in an attempt to be an unwavering support. As the night progressed, Lucas saw Clara receiving compliments and smiles, but he felt a pang of anguish as he thought that while she was flourishing, he was crumbling inside. The reality of his own lack of confidence hit him hard, and he realized that the real battle was within himself. He had forgotten that sincere support goes beyond simply being there. It requires a deep understanding of yourself. He was so focused on being Clara's pillar that he neglected his own weaknesses. The exhibition was over, but for Lucas, the real event was just beginning. When he saw Clara shine, he realized that what he really wanted was to see her free and confident. And at the same time, he needed to find that freedom within himself. The fear of failing, of not being enough, turned into an overwhelming drive to change. He was tired of living in the shadow of his insecurities. Lucas decided he needed to get back on his feet, not only for Clara, but for himself. He wanted to be a friend who not only supported, but also allowed himself to be vulnerable and truthful. In the days that followed, Lucas began to reflect on what success meant to him. It wasn't just about work achievements or social status, but about the freedom to be authentic. He realized that the true value of life was in embracing the journey with all its imperfections. This new perspective encouraged him to open up more to Clara, to share his struggles, and to seek mutual support. Their friendship, once marked by pressure and insecurity, began to transform into a growing partnership. They learned to celebrate each other's small victories, understanding that every step, whether big or small, counted. Lucas and Clara were beginning to realize that true strength was not in being perfect, but in accepting failures and starting over whenever necessary. And so, together, they were ready to face whatever came, in a cycle of support, love, and renewal. After the exhibition, Clara felt in a state of ecstasy and, at the same time, vulnerable. The recognition of her work filled her with joy, but Lucas's words still echoed in her mind. As she walked through the city's bright streets, her heart pounded with the euphoria of success, but also with the worry that Lucas wasn't doing as well as she was. Clara knew he was struggling internally, even if he couldn't express it clearly. In the following days, Clara decided that she could not leave Lucas aside. He had been her support throughout the creative process, and now it was her turn to give back. She invited him to coffee to talk, hoping that meeting could open up a space for Lucas to talk about his insecurities. When she sat down at the table, however, Clara noticed that Lucas was far away, looking out the window with a thoughtful look. "Lucas, are you okay?" she asked, breaking the silence that had formed between them. He hesitated before answering, as if weighing his words. "I'm just thinking about some things," he said, looking away. "I know you're worried about all this. The pressure of supporting me must be difficult," Clara said, trying to encourage him to open his heart. She saw a shadow of pain pass across his face. "But you also need to take care of yourself. I'm here for you." Lucas finally looked at her, and Clara could see the struggle in his eyes. "It's just that I don't know if I'm enough, Clara. Sometimes I feel like I'm just trying to fill a space I can't reach. I don't want you to feel like you need me, but at the same time, I want to be the support you deserve," he admitted, his voice breaking. Lucas's words touched Clara deeply. She realized that even after his success, his internal battle hadn't gone away. "You don't have to be perfect to support me. Nobody is. What matters is that we are on this journey together," she replied, reaching across the table and holding his hand. "I have my insecurities too, you know. The difference is that now I want us to be able to share this, instead of facing it alone." The conversation flowed, and with each word, Clara felt the distance between them decrease. They discussed their flaws, their insecurities, and the fears that accompanied them. Lucas began to understand that their vulnerability did not make them weak, but rather more human. And as this happened, Clara felt stronger, realizing that true friendship was built on honesty and acceptance. In the following weeks, the dynamic between the two transformed. Clara began to open up about her emotional struggles related to art and the recognition she was receiving. She talked about her fear that people wouldn't see her beyond her screens. Lucas, in turn, allowed himself to share his own insecurities, revealing how his previous experiences made him apprehensive about being a pillar for someone. Meanwhile, their circle of friends also began to feel the change. Ricardo, the critic who had always been a shadow over Lucas, began to notice that Clara's confidence was expanding. He was surprised to see how she handled praise and criticism. In a moment of reflection, Ricardo approached Lucas and asked, "What changed in Clara? She looks different now." Lucas smiled, feeling safer. She allowed herself to be vulnerable. "We both learned that we don't have to be perfect. True strength is being honest about who we are." Ricardo reflected on this and, in an unexpected moment, began to open up about his own insecurities. Their friendship, which was once marked by rivalry, began to blossom into a new space of mutual support. Over time, Clara and Lucas became a team, not only in art, but also in life. They started working together on new projects, and Clara felt more comfortable experimenting and taking risks in her works. Lucas, in turn, began to engage in his own passions, rediscovering hobbies he had put aside. This change began to be reflected in the way they interacted with others and with themselves. Clara and Lucas's overcoming was not instantaneous. Their insecurities continued to surface, but now there was a mutual understanding that helped them navigate these difficult times. Clara learned to celebrate not only her victories, but also the small flaws that made her human. Lucas, in turn, began to free himself from the pressure of always being the support, also allowing himself to be supported and understood. This new phase brought with it challenges and new life lessons. They realized that true happiness didn't just lie in success, but in the shared journey, the laughter, the tears, and the deep conversations that were now part of their lives. And so, together, Clara and Lucas began to follow a path that, although full of uncertainty, was also full of promise and new possibilities. Their friendship had become a beacon of support and love, where each allowed themselves to truly be who they were, without fear of failure. Clara and Lucas had begun a new phase in their lives, a phase marked by vulnerability and honesty. After the conversation they had at the cafe, they both felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Clara, now more open about her insecurities, began to realize that her flaws didn't make her any less worthy of love and respect. Lucas, in turn, was beginning to understand that he didn't need to carry the entire weight of the world on his shoulders. One afternoon, while working together on a new artistic project, Clara decided it was time to explore this new dynamic even further. "Lucas, did you remember that painting I made about my insecurities? I was thinking about doing something similar, but more focused on our experiences. What do you think?" she asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Lucas hesitated for a moment. "Do you think I'm good enough for this?" "I mean, I'm not an artist like you." Insecurity still hung over him. Clara stopped and took a deep breath. "Lucas, you don't need to be an artist. What matters is your experience, your perspective. Let's bring our stories together and create something unique. Art is about how we feel, not about being perfect." These words touched Lucas deeply. He began to understand that the true essence of art was not in the technique, but in the honesty with which it was expressed. Gradually, he allowed himself to collaborate. Together, they began to create a work that reflected their insecurities, fears, and hopes. Each brushstroke became a way of overcoming, a way of transforming pain into beauty. As they worked, Clara noticed that Lucas was opening up more. He began sharing stories about his fears of failure and his past experiences that left him insecure. "I remember one time I performed at an exhibition and everything went wrong. My work was criticized and I felt so small," he said, looking at the colors they were mixing. "I thought I would never recover from that. But you're here now, Lucas. You got up and continued." "That's a win," Clara responded, encouraging him to see the value in his experiences. "Every failure teaches us something. Look at us now, working together. This is a fresh start." Lucas smiled, feeling a little stronger. He began to see his failures as pieces of the puzzle that made up his journey. Through conversation and art, he began to realize that his worth was not tied to what others thought of him, but rather to what he believed about himself. In the following weeks, Clara and Lucas continued to work together. Their friendship blossomed in unexpected ways, and they discovered they could count on each other in times of doubt. During a walk in the park, Lucas turned to Clara and said, "You know, I used to think success was just about achievement, but now I realize it's much more than that. It's about having people by our side who support us." Clara agreed, touched by Lucas' sincerity. "Yes, and it's about finding balance. Sometimes we get lost in the search for recognition and forget to take care of ourselves and our relationships," she reflected. This understanding brought them closer together, and they began working not only on artistic projects, but also on their personal lives. With each step they took, Clara and Lucas became more aware of their emotions and how they dealt with them. One day, as they were talking about their hopes for the future, Clara asked, "What do you hope to achieve with all of this?" Lucas thought for a moment before responding. "I think I want to be able to look back and see that I've grown, that I've learned to trust myself. I no longer want to be a hostage to what others think of me," he said, with a gleam of determination in his eyes. Clara smiled, recognizing the strength he was beginning to find within himself. Over time, their friendship solidified. They laughed together, shared quiet moments that were comfortable, and supported each other through emotional challenges. Lucas began to take small steps towards new hobbies, rediscovering his passion for music, something he had put aside for a long time. He started playing the guitar again, and Clara encouraged him, whenever he could, to perform for friends. "Just have fun, Lucas. Don't worry about what others think. The important thing is that you're doing something you love," she reminded him. These small victories began to accumulate, and Lucas realized that each performance, however small, made him more confident. He was learning to see failures not as a sign of weakness, but as opportunities for growth. This began to be reflected in his art, which now carried a new meaning. Clara and Lucas discovered that by allowing themselves to be vulnerable, they were building a solid foundation for their lives. They learned to celebrate not just the successes, but also the failures that made them more human. Each day, their friendship became a beacon of support, where acceptance and love were the greatest achievements. In the end, Clara realized that true wealth was not in external achievements, but in the connections they created along the way. And Lucas, in turn, learned that the journey of self-discovery and personal growth was an ongoing process, full of challenges, but also great rewards. Together, they were ready to face whatever came, knowing they had each other. As Clara and Lucas continued to delve deeper into their experiences and emotions, an unexpected event was about to test the limits of their friendship and Lucas' personal growth. A local art gallery decided to hold an exhibition that celebrated vulnerability and resilience. Clara, excited by the idea, suggested that they participate in a joint work. Lucas, on the other hand, felt butterflies in his stomach when he heard the proposal. "Clara, what if they don't like what we do? What if everything we create isn't good enough?" Insecurity still lingered behind his words, like a shadow that never seemed to dissipate. Clara looked into his eyes, noticing the fear that was taking over her friend. "Lucas, this isn't about what other people think. It's about us, about our journey. We need to allow ourselves to show who we are." Tension was in the air, and Lucas felt torn. On the one hand, he wanted to support Clara and take this step alongside her. On the other, the fear of failure and the memory of that previous exposure, where he felt small and vulnerable, threatened his resolve. Clara noticed his internal struggle and, without hesitation, offered her hand. "Let's do this together. If something bad happens, we'll be there for each other. We have already overcome so much, and this is another chance to show our strength." The day of the exhibition arrived, and Lucas was restless. The place was full of people, all admiring the works and discussing them. Clara was excited, but Lucas could barely look at the paintings. He felt like an imposter, a worthless artist. When it came time to present their work, Lucas's heart sank. He hesitated, almost giving up. But Clara, sensing his anguish, held his hand tightly. "We're in this together, Lucas. Remember what we learned. What matters is our voice." With a deep sigh, Lucas decided to face his fears. He took the stage with Clara, and as she talked about the inspiration behind the painting, he felt a rush of emotion. He wanted to be a part of it. He wanted to share his story. When Clara finished, he took the microphone, his hand shaking. But when he looked at Clara, he saw in her the confidence he wanted for himself. I'm not an artist like many here, but this painting is a representation of what we feel, our insecurities and fears. What's on screen is a reflection of our internal battles and the support we found in each other, Lucas said, his voice hesitant but full of sincerity. The room was silent, and he began to feel safer. We all face challenges, and sometimes it's hard to believe in ourselves. But I learned that it is important to have people by our side who help us see our value. He realized he was talking not just about the work, but about his own journey. A wave of support ran through the room, and Lucas felt the positive energy. He was overcoming his past, facing his insecurities head-on. What was once a paralyzing fear now turned into a surge of strength. However, at the end of the presentation, an unexpected criticism emerged. A renowned art critic, known for his unforgiving opinions, stood up and said, "While the intention is admirable, the execution leaves much to be desired. This work seems like an attempt to seek acceptance, but fails to capture the true essence of vulnerability." Lucas froze. The critic's words were like a blow. He felt the pain of criticism resonate in his chest, and Clara's look at his side encouraged him not to back down. "It's true that we failed to capture perfection," Clara interjected, her voice firm. "But this work is about being human, about accepting our flaws and finding beauty in it." Clara's words lit a light inside Lucas. He looked at the critic and said, "Art is not just about being perfect. It's about the journey, about the emotions we feel. Thank you for your opinion, but this work represents who we are, and that is more important than any criticism." The tension in the room eased. People started applauding, and Lucas finally felt free. He realized that regardless of outside opinions, what really mattered was what he and Clara had created together. They had turned their weaknesses into strengths, and this experience brought them together in a way no words could describe. After the presentation, as they walked out of the gallery, Lucas looked at Clara and said, "Thank you for believing in me. I really needed this." Clara smiled, knowing it wasn't just a victory for Lucas, but for both of them. They had faced a fear and, together, found new strength. At that moment, Lucas learned that a person's worth is not measured by the success or approval of others, but by the courage to be true to oneself. Their friendship not only stood the test of time, but grew stronger, showing that the true richness lay in the connections they created along their journey. And so, with lighter hearts and stronger souls, Clara and Lucas were ready to face any challenge that life presented to them, always by each other's side. As Clara and Lucas left the gallery, the adrenaline from the performance was still pulsing through their bodies. Lucas felt light, as if he had finally freed himself from a weight he had been carrying for a long time. The renowned critic's harsh criticism still echoed in his mind, but as he looked at Clara, he realized that it was just a part of the experience. There was something deeper that they had achieved together. "Did you remember everything we talked about?" Clara asked as they walked down the brightly lit street. "About accepting our failures and learning from them?" Lucas nodded, his mind full of reflections. He began to understand that the critic's words would not define him. What really mattered was the courage they had to come forward and share their story. "Yes, and I realize now that that's what art is about. It's not about being perfect, it's about being authentic," he replied, his voice carrying a new glow of confidence. The following days were of reflection for Lucas. He dedicated himself to exploring his creativity more freely, without the burden of judgment. He began experimenting with new techniques, using colors and shapes that he would not have dared to use before. He realized that by allowing himself to make mistakes, he was actually freeing himself. In a conversation with Clara, he commented, "You know, I always thought I needed to be perfect for my work to be valuable. Now, I see that my value lies in being myself." Clara smiled, knowing this was an important lesson. Over time, their friendship grew even stronger. They started meeting more frequently, not just to create art, but to talk about their lives, their fears, and their achievements. The vulnerability that once seemed like a weakness had now become a bridge that united them. "It's amazing how we can grow, isn't it?" said Clara in one of these meetings. "I think the exhibition was just the beginning of a new phase." Lucas agreed, feeling grateful to have Clara by his side. "Yes, and it makes me think about how life is full of new beginnings. Even when something doesn't go as planned, we can always try again." This new perspective allowed him to face other challenges in his life, both personal and professional. He began to get involved in community projects, sharing his passion for art with children and young people. On this new journey, Lucas found not only a purpose, but also a new type of fulfillment. Clara was also going through changes. Lucas's courage inspired her to explore her own creativity in deeper ways. She began experimenting with different painting styles and participating in workshops, discovering new forms of expression. "I think this journey we're on is preparing us for something bigger," she once said, while mixing paints on her palette. "It's as if we are being shaped by the art we make and the experiences we have." The lessons learned at the gallery began to be reflected in other areas of their lives. Lucas noticed that interactions with his coworkers changed. He became more open and willing to listen to the opinions of others without the fear of being judged. The insecurity that once paralyzed him had now transformed into a desire to learn and grow. This attitude did not go unnoticed by his colleagues, who began to seek him out for advice and support. In turn, Clara also became a source of inspiration for other people. By sharing her journey of overcoming and authenticity, she began to create a safe space where people felt comfortable expressing their own vulnerabilities. At an art meeting she organized, she encouraged everyone to share their stories, creating an environment of empathy and respect. "We all have something to learn from each other," Clara stated, her voice full of passion. "And it is in the diversity of experiences that we find true beauty." The impact of the exhibition on the lives of Lucas and Clara was profound. They not only overcame a moment of insecurity, but turned this experience into a source of learning and growth, both individual and collective. Lucas began to see friendship as one of life's greatest treasures, something that transcends success or external acceptance. He learned that true wealth lies in the connections we make with others and the courage to be our authentic selves. And so, with lighter hearts and a new outlook on life, Clara and Lucas continued to create, explore, and support each other. They discovered that life's journey is full of ups and downs, but that, with love and friendship, it is possible to face any challenge. Each new work of art, each new conversation, each new experience became a celebration of the vulnerability and strength they found in each other. The future was full of possibilities, and they were ready to embrace each of them together. As the years passed, Lucas often recalled the night at the gallery. That experience, marked by insecurities and criticism, had become a milestone in his life. Looking back, he realized how that event had been the catalyst for profound change. The journey of overcoming that began there not only made him face his limitations, but also taught him to value authenticity, both in his art and in his relationships. He had become a stronger, more confident person, capable of inspiring others to also take risks and embrace their vulnerabilities. Lucas found a new direction in life. He dedicated himself to community projects where he could share his passion for art with children and young people. He encouraged them to express their creativity without fear of making mistakes, highlighting that each failure was a learning opportunity. In each class, Lucas saw the children's faces lit up as they discovered new ways of expressing themselves, and this fueled his motivation even more. He realized that by helping others, his own journey of self-discovery was solidified. The connection he established with those young people was a reflection of the friendship he had built with Clara, a bond that had become one of the greatest treasures of his life. Meanwhile, Clara had also embarked on a transformative path. His courage and determination inspired not only Lucas, but many others around him. She became a mentor to aspiring artists, creating an environment where vulnerability was celebrated. Clara understood that each story told, each failure shared, created a web of empathy and connection. Through her workshops, she helped shape a more inclusive and welcoming artistic community where everyone felt valued. Reflecting on her own journey, Clara realized that art was a powerful means of healing and transformation, both for those who create it and for those who appreciate it. The friendship between Lucas and Clara solidified even more. They often met to discuss new ideas, exchange experiences, and dream together. The passion for art they shared turned into a collaborative project where their visions intertwined. In each work they created, there was not only their individual expression, but also the strength of the partnership they had cultivated. Together, they showed that true wealth was not in sales or fame, but in the ability to touch lives and bring about positive change around them. Lucas began to understand that success, often measured in material terms, was not what really mattered. He lived a simpler life, but one full of meaning. What he valued most were the relationships he had built, the impact he had on the lives of others, and the satisfaction of being true to himself. The lessons he learned along the way shaped his attitudes and choices. He sought opportunities to grow and learn, and no longer feared the failures that once paralyzed him. When reflecting on everything he had been through, Lucas felt at peace. He had found a new way of dealing with life's issues. The wisdom gained on his journey helped him see the world with new eyes. He understood that every challenge was a chance to learn and that vulnerability was actually a source of strength. The experiences he had lived were no longer a burden, but a collection of stories that made him who he was. He learned to accept and embrace his emotions, recognizing that they were an essential part of his humanity. His friendship with Clara proved to be one of the greatest blessings of his life. Together, they faced challenges, celebrated achievements, and supported each other through difficulties. This unexpected connection transformed not only how Lucas saw people, but also how he saw himself. He learned that everyone has their own battles and that empathy is key to building meaningful relationships. From his experience, he became an advocate for the importance of opening up to others, sharing vulnerabilities, and creating safe spaces where everyone can express themselves. Over time, Lucas and Clara continued to follow their paths, always together, always supporting each other. They became not just friends, but a true chosen family. The journey they began at the gallery has expanded into a life full of possibilities, dreams, and achievements. They discovered that by embracing authenticity and courage, they could not only transform their own lives, but also positively impact the lives of many around them. And so, with hearts full of gratitude, they moved forward, ready to face whatever the future held for them, always together. Lucas looked at the horizon, where the sun was beginning to set, dyeing the sky with shades of orange and pink. That beautiful scenery made him think about how his life had changed since the night at the gallery. He remembered the uncertainties that accompanied him, the feeling of not belonging and the fear of being judged. But now, as he reflected on his journey, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. Every step he had taken led him to a place of self-knowledge and acceptance. Friendship with Clara was fundamental in this process. They became not only art companions, but also confidants. In one of their conversations, Clara said, "Lucas, art is an extension of our soul. By sharing it, we are showing who we really are." Those words rang true. He understood now that each brushstroke on his canvases was a form of liberation, an opportunity to show his emotions and vulnerabilities. The workshops that Lucas offered to children were a reflection of this learning. He always told them, "Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Each mistake is a step toward what you really want to express." This philosophy not only helped young people feel more confident in their creativity, but it also helped him solidify his own confidence. Seeing the smiles and joy on the children's faces, Lucas felt he was taking an important step towards his own healing. On a sunny afternoon, while organizing a joint exhibition of their works, Clara and Lucas talked about their achievements. "Have you ever stopped to think about how this all started?" asked Clara, looking at the displayed screens. "It's incredible how our vulnerability brought us here. Without that fear, without the insecurity, we wouldn't have met." Lucas nodded, feeling emotion well up inside him. "Yes, and I realize now that true success is not in how many sales we make or how many applause we receive. What really matters is the connection we create with people, the way we can impact their lives through art. Clara smiled, admiring her friend's transformation. And to think that all of this was born from a moment of courage, of facing our fears. We are proof that it is possible to start over, that we can get up after every fall. The dialogue between them served as a powerful reminder that life is about starting over. Lucas remembered his past failures, times when he doubted himself and let fear take over. But now, each of these moments became a lesson. He had learned to embrace his imperfections and use them as a springboard to grow. It's true, Clara. Every mistake I made was a learning opportunity. And without them, I wouldn't be who I am today. As the exhibition approached, the community began to respond to their work. People of all ages gathered, sharing stories and feelings. Lucas saw the true power of art there, the ability to unite people, create empathy, and heal wounds. He realized that despite the challenges, he had found a greater purpose in his life. As time passed, his and Clara's friendship solidified even more. They became a chosen family, always ready to support each other. This connection transformed their lives, helping them face challenges with courage and determination. Lucas understood that love and friendship were the true riches that accumulated in their hearts. At the end of the exhibition, as people praised his works, Lucas felt a warmth in his chest. He knew that everything he had experienced led him to this point, and that was more valuable than any material recognition. At that moment, he was at peace with himself, accepting his choices and learning to value each small step. Lucas's life had changed in extraordinary ways. He no longer saw the past as a burden, but as a collection of stories that shaped his identity. He learned that vulnerability was not weakness, but a source of strength. With that, he felt ready to face the future, whatever the challenge. And so, with a heart full of gratitude, Lucas looked at Clara and said, "I'm so happy we found each other. Our journey together is a testimony that even in hardship, we can find beauty and hope." If you have also experienced moments of insecurity or found strength in friendship, share your story in the comments. Let's celebrate the small achievements and strength we find along the way together. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue to bring you stories that inspire and transform lives. Every interaction counts and helps spread this powerful message.